Okay, so this is a revision video for Spectre, which features in both Section A and Section B of the first exam, Component 1. So this actual video will be all encapsulating, so it will look at both Section A, which will just look at the poster, Spectre, where you analyse the poster if it turns up in Section A, and Section B, Industry, where we look at Spectre in terms of how it works in the film industry. So behind the scenes, if you like. So here we go. So we're going to begin by looking at the key focus areas for Component 1, exploring the media, and we're looking at these focus areas: media language for the poster, representation for the poster, media industries for our cross-media study, where we look at Bond and how it works in the industry, media context, which is both the poster and the cross-media study, where we again look at the background of Spectre. To put it really as simply as I can, is essentially the poster for Section A is essentially the text. We study the text, whereas media context, we're looking behind the poster, behind the Spectre poster, in terms of what was going on in the British film industry when the film was made and how it contributes to the film industry, how the film goes from an idea to being shown on a cinema screen to being released on DVD and Blu-ray. So the whole journey, essentially. So the product context. Spectre is a James Bond film released on the 26th of October 2015, starring Daniel Craig as 007 in his fourth appearance as the fictional MI6 agent. Based on a book by Ian Fleming, the film was produced by the British company Eon, which stands for Everything or Nothing Productions, and distributed by United Artists. The film was created with an estimated $245 million budget, making it the most expensive Bond film and one of the most expensive films ever made. It grossed over $880 million at the worldwide box office. The poster was designed by Empire Design, a British film promotion agency. The poster was released on the 3rd of September 2015 as part of a wide global marketing campaign for the film. Part 1. Starting points. Media language. Social and cultural context. The masked man in the background is wearing a skeleton mask used to symbolise the Mexican festival of the Day of the Dead. The opening sequence to the film shows a Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City, which isn't something that actually took place in real life. However, the interest in the film and the government's determination to promote pre-Hispanic Mexican culture meant that 1 year later the local authorities decided to organise such a parade, Dia de los Muertos, on October 29th, 2016. It was a huge success and attended by 250,000 people. The Tom Ford white tuxedo worn by Daniel Craig revived a fashion trend from the 1970s. Previous Bonds have worn a white tuxedo, and John Travolta famously sported one in the film Saturday Night Fever in 1977. It has been argued that Daniel Craig initiated a fashion trend, as many celebrities including David Beckham and Benedict Cumberbatch were photographed wearing a white tuxedo around the time of the film's release, underlining the cultural significance of the Bond franchise. Consider the codes and conventions of media language and how elements of media language influence meaning. The central image is a long shot of James Bond, smartly dressed, arms folded, with the gun pointing to his left. The dominance of his image suggests he is the film's protagonist, and so probably a quote-unquote good guy. According to Vladimir Prop's theory, he would be considered the hero. This is reinforced by the use of colour. Bond's white jacket connotes his heroic status, contrasting with the dark, shadowed antagonist in the background. Bond's clothing connotes business and professionalism, and the gun, an iconic part of Bond's uniform, is a common prop used in the action thriller genre, and so audiences can expect violence, action and danger. The gun is casually pointed, connoting that Bond is never off duty. He is always alert and ready for action. The tuxedo is iconic of the Bond image, and the white tuxedo connotes luxury, wealth and sophistication, the high life that off-duty Bond enjoys, linked to martinis, women, gambling, etc. The red carnation has connotations of romance and passion, but also of danger. By placing Bond in such a strong yet casual pose, the audience is reminded just how cool, calm and collected Bond is. He is a trained assassin and working for MI6. He is relaxed here, but in control. And we are reminded of his ability to keep his composure in any situation. Bond is looking directly at the audience, seemingly making eye contact. This is a common convention of film posters and helps to add the more personal approach of this format. The intensity of his stare and the lack of a smile could suggest how seriously he expects to be taken. A common convention for film posters is to have the actor's name placed quite prominently as another way to entice the audience. However, this poster doesn't do that. His name is in a very small font in the upper left hand corner of this poster. This may be because the producers are confident that the audiences will all recognise him, and any text may detract from the visuals. Craig's name also appears alongside many other names. For instance, Albert R. Broccoli's EON Productions presents Daniel Craig as Ian Fleming's James Bond, reflecting the many iconic figures involved in creating the franchise. At the bottom of the poster, the title of the film appears alongside the iconic 007 logo. The gold font connotes luxury, wealth, aspiration, exclusivity, i.e. not everybody can have it. The capitalised title suggests power and strength. The title Spectre relates to the organisation that is in opposition to Bond in the film's narrative, but also connotes a ghost from Bond's past, so it has like a double meaning. Beneath this is another typical convention of film posters, the credit block. This gives industry information such as other stars' names, directors and producers, and is much smaller and tucked away so as to not divert the audience's attention away from the main image or the rest of the poster. Consider intertextuality. The white tuxedo intertextually references earlier Bond films. Previous Bonds, including Roger Moore, have worn the white tuxedo. However, this poster specifically references Sean Connery and Goldfinger, providing a sense of familiarity, nostalgia and pleasure to fans who recognise the link. Bond films have often deliberately referenced earlier films in the franchise. For example, the Bond girl emerging from the sea, Ursula Andress in Dr. No and Halle Berry in Die Another Day. Daniel Craig also emerged from the sea in Casino Royale, his first outing as Bond. However, it was denied that this was a reference to the earlier films. Consider narrative. In the background, behind Bond, there is an image of a man wearing a skeleton mask and bone design on his jacket. The skeleton has connotations of death and danger, and the mask is covering up someone's identity. Someone who wishes to remain hidden, someone lurking in the shadows. It is quite easy to guess that this character would be Prop's villain, and his mask that is reminiscent of such holidays as Halloween or Day of the Dead means he is Bond's antagonist and no doubt wants to kill him. This acts as an enigma code for the audience, which is a very famous media theory by Roland Barthes, and we've encountered it so far in the videos, as we want to find out who the character is and why he wants Bond. The skeleton also references the title of the film, Spectre, connoting a ghostly, haunted presence from Bond's past. Part 2. Starting points. Representation. Social and cultural context. James Bond is an action hero who, since the 1960s, has been constructed to embody many masculine stereotypes of strength, independence, sexual prowess, etc. The representation of women in the franchise has traditionally been similarly stereotypical. The Bond girl who is the beautiful love interest for Bond, a Prop's princess, insignificant to the narrative and ultimately disposable. The representation of gender in the Bond franchise has evolved over time and to an extent to reflect the changing social context. It would be useful to consider the poster of the man with the golden gun here. Craig's Bond is not as sexist or overtly stereotypical as the earlier incarnations and reflects some contemporary notions of masculinity, as his Bond is older, more thoughtful and shows signs of vulnerability. Interestingly, the poster does not reflect this development and represents Bond as the familiar action hero to sell the film. Consider representations of gender. Bond provides an image of masculinity that connotes bravery, intelligence and strength. Bond's posture is strong and dominant. His arms are folded in a stereotypically masculine stance. This closed body language connotes his lack of emotion, his independence, and also his professional role as a rational, ruthless assassin. The use of the key light on Bond is stark and highlights his chiseled features, constructing a representation of tough, inscrutable masculinity. The gun suggests danger, but his posture connotes confidence with a relaxed attitude towards such dangers. This hero archetype is typical of the action genre, and audiences are led to believe through this representation that this is how a man should be. The villain in the background is also male, reflecting the male-dominated nature of the franchise. The main protagonist, i.e. hero, and antagonist, i.e. villain, who drives the narrative are both male. Possible areas for further investigation. Feminist theoretical perspectives. The absence of female characters on this poster reflects a feminist perspective, as women are still underrepresented within action film franchises. There are stronger female characters in Spectre, however this poster does not feature them. So we can infer that much of the marketing prioritises Bond as an iconic figure who will appeal to audiences. Part 3. Starting points. Industry. Now remember, this is for section B of the exam, okay? Section A is just studying the poster. Section B, you're looking behind the scenes. So the historical context. Hollywood is the oldest film industry in the world, originating in the 1890s. The first motion pictures were less than a minute long, due to the limitations of technology, and sound was not introduced into films until 1927. Hollywood is considered the film factory of the world and exports its products to most countries. Consider the nature of media production, including by large organisations who own the products they produce and by individuals and groups. Film production consists of 5 major stages: development, pre-production, production, post-production and distribution. And here's what they mean. Development is the stage at which ideas are created. If necessary, rights are bought, screenplay is written, and financing is sought. So let's unpack that for a little bit. So someone decides, say, in this case, Bond, okay? So they come up with the idea to make a Bond film. They might need to buy the rights to the Bond character, alright, because it's an intellectual property from someone else. So Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote the book, his estate, because he's dead now, but his estate is part and parcel of the Bond franchise, and there's no way you can make a Bond film without paying money towards his relatives for the rights to use the Bond character, even if you're not actually basing it on one of his books. And essentially a screenplay is written from that, and based on the screenplay, how good it is, usually financing is got from the industry, like studios. So MGM is actually the main studio that involved with the Bond franchise. So chances are the screenplay is written, brought to MGM, and usually it's a formality when it comes to Bond movies because they always tend to make money. They sign off on it, and then it gets into the next stage, which is pre-production. So this is where the cast and film crew are found, locations chosen to film at, and sets are built for those that can't be done on location. So for instance, an underground layer, a factory or whatever like that. Then you produce it, so you make it. The film is shot during the production stage. Then after all the footage is shot, and usually there's loads of footage shot, okay, most of which will not actually feature in the film itself, because it would be like 8 hours long if that was the case. It goes into post-production, and the recorded film is edited down to about 2.5 hours, I think Spectre is, so edited down to the actual length we see at the cinema and on DVD. Crew work on the sound, images and visual effects, so through video editing, usually like digital editing software, maybe Adobe Premiere Pro, which is what all you use as well. You've used that, and actually that is industry standard for when they edit films in the industry. Distribution is the final stage. And this is where the finished film is distributed, i.e. sent out to cinemas. Alright, it's screened at the cinema and released for home viewing. So first of all, it's obviously done in stages. You know, there's no point releasing a DVD and Blu-ray before the cinema release, because you'll impact the cinema ticket sales, because some people will just buy the DVD and not actually bother to go to see it to the cinema. But if you don't give them the Blu-ray or DVD first, that's an incentive. It makes them want to go see the film at the cinema if they're into Bond films. So that's key, because they get the first load of money, the studio gets the first load of money from ticket sales, which means it earns a fortune, and it earned a fortune at the box office, and then earns more money in terms of the DVD and Blu-ray release, as well as all tie-in products like vodka, tuxedos, the mini car is tied into it, okay? So loads and loads of products. So while the poster is set for Section A and does not need to be analysed textually for Section B, it can be used as a starting point for exploring the industry issues. For instance, company names MGM, EON, Columbia, Sony can be researched in terms of production and distribution, ownership issues including conglomerates, names of actors, exploration of previous roles, star appeal, director, writers, other crew. For example, the director of photography, he's the one that films it and makes sure the lighting is correct. Costume designer, exploration of these roles and their importance in the production process. IMAX, role of technology in exhibition and circulation of products, i.e. at the cinema and on DVD Blu-ray. Hashtag, websites, the role of new technology in social media in marketing film products. Soundtrack is on Decca Records, and this creates an idea of synergy and convergence of different platforms to promote the film. To break this down, synergy is a key media phrase which describes different companies coming together to create as much money as possible for a product or associated product in the media. So in this case, Decca Records released the soundtrack to the film, so in tandem, in collaboration, in partnership with MGM, both MGM and Decca came together as companies to create the soundtrack, and so that created money revenue for both Decca Records and MGM. But MGM will obviously be part of everything, so DVDs, t-shirts, vodka, all the products that I could spend all day mentioning. MGM essentially, through working with other companies that aren't necessarily in the film industry but actually can create certain products that are related to James Bond, keeps adding more and more money to the eventual total amount earned from any given film, and this is called synergy. Convergence is essentially where different media platforms, say the internet, DVD, Blu-ray players, TV, the cinema, of course, wherever, okay, all work together, and essentially different things can be found on these platforms that can be bought and sold, essentially, to do with the franchise. Okay, consider the effect of ownership and control of media organisations, including conglomerate ownership, diversification and vertical integration. There's a lot going on here, there's a lot of different phrases there which I'm going to unpack again. Okay, so essentially conglomerate ownership is where it's more than one company. We don't realise, but even like companies like, Warner Brothers and Paramount Studios, there's bigger companies behind them that own them, and this is part of a conglomerate. Usually it's different, actually loads of different little companies or big companies even, that then work together, are all part and parcel of one big picture, which turns out to be, say, a Warner Brothers film or an MGM film, or a Universal film, Paramount film. It doesn't matter. Basically, essentially, we don't realise, but there's loads going on behind, and we'll be exploring that throughout the course. Diversification is essentially where break it down, diversity meaning lots of different things. So through diversification, it's essentially the diversity of products. So not just the film, there'd be like the vodka, the DVD, the tuxedo, maybe the vodka, the released James Bond vodka, etc. Now vertical integration is a bit more complicated, and we'll probably tackle that in class rather than do it in here, and maybe I'll do a video later on it, but it's just far too much to get into right now. So the James Bond series is produced by Eon Productions, a British film production company based in London, Sony Pictures and MGM. So then this is part of the conglomerate I was talking about, because Sony Pictures is part of the conglomerate of the overall. The video rights of all of Eon's films are owned by MGM Home Entertainment and are controlled by MGM's distributor 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. So again, 20th Century Fox is a completely different studio, okay, but they're working with MGM, so this is what's called a conglomerate, because all these companies working together, okay. On April 9th 2010, a year and a half into the making of the 23rd Bond film, subsequently called Skyfall, the producers decided to suspend production due to MGM spiralling towards bankruptcy. It wasn't until the end of 2010 when the new owners of MGM were able to secure a $500 million revolving credit line that the film could continue using. So in other words, borrowing money that it didn't own on the basis that hopefully it would make money back and pay back that loan. Alright? No one lends money for free, ladies and gentlemen. Bear that in mind, not just in media but in life. But luckily it made $1.1 billion at the global box office, more than any other Bond film. This allowed the Bond franchise to continue. If it had failed at the box office, the whole Bond franchise would have been in complete debt. Everything would have fallen apart, and maybe there'd be no other Bond films ever unless someone else bought the rights to the Bonds. But if it failed, no one would want to buy the rights because they'd be very reluctant to, because hey, the last film bombed, right? Okay, so bear that in mind. Bond has always been well known for its exotic locations across the globe, and Spectre was no exception. Buoyed on by the success of Skyfall, Spectre used Pinewood Studios in London as its base, but then was also shot in Mexico City, Rome, Solden, Morocco and Austria. Consider the functions and types of regulation of the media. Now this is where we start discussing, again, age ratings for films and how they work and who does it and stuff like that. We'll go into it deeper in class as well, and we'll be touching upon this in year 9 as well. Consider the functions and types of regulation of the media. Film and video releases in Britain are amongst the most tightly regulated in the Western world. Age restrictions are placed on all commercially released films by the BBFC, short for the British Board of Film Classification, and some are even expected to make cuts or alter the film in some way to conform to the guidelines. Sony had to cut some violence from Spectre in order to secure a 12A rating in the UK instead of a 15 classification the BBFC originally recommended. This may seem like a sensible decision in order to secure a much wider audience. However, it could be argued that it is no longer the original movie that Sam Mendes, the director, wanted the audience to see. Consider how the media operate as commercial industries on a global scale and reach both large and specialised audiences. The long-running Bond franchise has an established fan base, and Spectre, a US-UK co-production, received global distribution, i.e. all over the world, because the Americans helped us in the UK finance the film, and they helped us with that. So global distribution included theatrically, i.e. in the cinema, and on DVD and Blu-ray, as well as streaming, etc., to reach a very large audience. Unlike many media products, it is difficult to specify a specific target audience for Bond. The reason for this being is that it spans so many decades, so many leads have played Bond, and so many directors have directed the films themselves. However, it's clearly intended for mass audience and has great commercial appeal, i.e., it's bound to make loads of money. Bond is iconic and has universal appeal. He appeals to everybody really, or at least lots of people, because he is charming, suave, good looking, and most importantly always catches the quote-unquote bad guys. Arguably, men want to be him and women want to be with him. providing a form of escapism from their everyday lives. And this touches upon something really important, in the sense that escapism is why most people watch films, or engage with media, basically, and basically means we can get out of our boredom of everyday life. So people tend to watch Bond films to have the excitement of a life they'll probably never lead, and they can pretend they're Bond and they're going to get the girl and imagine what it would be like to be Bond and to be that desirable to the opposite sex and to be that important to the world. So Bond also provides a narrative we feel comfortable with. In other words, the bad guy does something wrong, good guy catches him and wins the day, and reinforces dominant messages and values about good and bad. And basically what that means is essentially that in society, at least, we have these messages and values in society that good people who work hard and do the right thing, protect the innocent, uphold the law, basically like Bond does to the extreme, are also always going to win, whereas bad people who break the law, go against the rules, don't care about people and their safety, they'll always get their comeuppance. Now obviously in real life that's just not really the case, but with the Bond films we can pretend that we can we can enjoy ourselves. That falls back into the idea of escapism again, because in real life it just doesn't work that way. But in the Bond films we can be reassured in this fake England, this fake London, fake world. Wherever Bond is, everything's going to be alright. And that's basically it. That's the end of the study guide. There'll be more along the lines of when